As we approach World Mission Sunday here on EWTN Live, we'll discuss new ways that you can be connected to the work of the church. So please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live, where we bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to our guests, just want to mention that today is also the feast of a martyr, Pope St. Callistus I. He was a slave. He was accused of some theft of his master's money, but there are all sorts of things, and we don't even know all the story because one of his strong enemies, later on a saint himself, but not very saintly at first, St. Hippolytus, wrote a lot of nasty things about him because he couldn't stand Pope St. Callistus, partly because Hippolytus wanted to be the Pope, so he didn't think that an ex-slave should be that. But while he was away from Rome, he was ordained a deacon, and he eventually came back and was elected Pope instead of Hippolytus. And he was very clear on preaching about mercy, while there were other groups in Rome who were not so interested in mercy. And that was one of the splits that was going on. Should we be really strict and just exclude them from the church, or do we welcome repentant sinners back? Throughout the history of that early papacy, it was always the Orthodox side that welcomed the sinners back with mercy. And heretics were the ones who always excluded them and ended up excluded themselves. Also, before we get to our guests, I want to mention, how about them Cubs? Now we'll get down to business. We have a guest tonight here who is to share with us how we can all be missionaries through prayer and sacrifice. And we'll find out tonight how that missionary activity doesn't occur just in far away lands. In fact, just in the last couple of years, Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York and Archbishop Charles Chaput of Philadelphia have both said that the United States is mission territory once again, whether we recognize it yet or not. So please welcome the National Director of the Pontifical Mission Societies in the United States, Father Andrew Small. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good
Welcome.
to be here. Thank you.
This is the same basic organizational, slightly different change, but propagation of the faith.
That's
is
right. Yes.
The same, which Venerable Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen used to be head of. Is that not the case?
That's correct. The Society for the Propagation of the Faith, or the PROP as some people call it, colloquially, was the national director back in 1950, from 1950 to 1966, and that's the largest of the four Pontifical Mission Societies that look after many aspects of the church's missionary activity all over the world. But that's the biggest, the largest, it's the most well-known, and that's the one that Venerable Servant of God, Fulton Sheen, headed for those 16 years, and then he went on to even bigger and greater things, as we know.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the things that was very good to realize, he was on commercial television, and his show was bigger than any other show that was on TV. When I was a kid, I used to prefer Uncle Milton Berle, but Mom and Dad wanted to watch Archbishop Sheen, as did most of the rest of the country. But he would take the money, because it was a commercial network. They paid him, decent money for those days to be on television, and that all went to, as he always said, to help people in the missions, regardless of race or creed or nationality. Helped people who were just in need. That was a very admirable thing about what he did with the product that he made from television.
And, you know, he went up against not some small celebrity. It was Milton Berle came to be known as Uncle Milty.
And Mr. Television. That was his nickname in the early 50s.
Right, a little before my time, but then he beat him out, he won the Emmy, and then they made him Uncle Fulty. I don't know whether you know that was one of his nicknames. When he beat out Milton Berle, he replaced Uncle Milty with Uncle Fulty. So he had over 30 million viewers, I think, when there weren't 400 channels in those days, as I recall.
As a matter of fact, one of my favorite stories is how Berle asked him once when they met, "How did you knock me off? I was number one on TV." And Archbishop Sheen said it was easy. I had better writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Which gets us to what you're doing here, that we, you know, what is going on is the Pontifical Mission Society, that this is concerned about the missions of the world. That's why the Pope is involved.
Right.
He gives that global scope to the missions, and you help to raise money for missions locally and abroad. Tell us about some of the things going on in the missions.
I mean, money certainly is nothing can happen without the funds that the church needs to do its work, to support its missionaries, to train its ministers all around the world in 1,150 dioceses, Father Mitch, can you imagine? So that's 500 in Africa, 400 in Asia, massive growth in Asia, and then the others sprinkled around. And they're seen as sort of the young, still sort of diocese that needs support from outside. A bit like the New Testament command to support those parts of the church, those parts of the body that don't yet have all that they need to be self-sufficient. Now, we have lots of needs here in the US, but their needs are more around the pastoral support of the personnel. Chapels, clinics, convents,
schools,
many schools, millions and millions of children across Africa. No, we don't support all of the schools, but we give a little bit of money to each one of the dioceses across the mission lands so that they can do the work, the essential work of bringing the good news to those who have nobody to preach it to them. How will they know unless somebody goes and tells them about the saving message of Jesus Christ?
And see, this is something that is so inherent in the Catholic approach to missions going back to the barbarian invasion times, that the Benedictines went out to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. But they also opened the first schools in Europe. They had the first libraries. They taught people everything from reading and writing and arithmetic to farming. And the church is continuing on, that the gospel of Christ stirs up a desire for more knowledge, doesn't suppress it. This is all part of it.
Right. I mean, like the Church of the Pentecost, it was born speaking the languages of the peoples. People were amazed at how suddenly the Spirit was able to reach into each tribe and each people to make that unified word present, alive, and active wherever people are. And that's what the church is doing today. So oftentimes, a lot of our missionaries will come from the local community. They feel inspired. They've heard somebody speak in a way that moves them to want to not just tell people about Jesus, but to bind up the wounds, to heal the sick, to educate the poor. The whole kit and caboodle is what the church is involved in. It's the theme of this World Mission Sunday. It's everybody and the whole church and the whole world. That's the Catholic nature of the message that we're inspired to bring to others.
And just to help folks get some grasp of how the church is just exploding in some areas. I was talking earlier how Al Jazeera television, which means the peninsula. It's an Arabic television news station, 24-hour news station. They report regularly how between 6 and 8 million Muslims a year become Christian. You don't hear that on our nightly news,
right?
But over there, they do, and the church is responding to this.
Right, and as you know, all church, when we like to belong to it, remember our local church. We're not big on the massive mega churches where people can get lost. The very nature of the preaching of the gospel in our tradition is that it's supremely personal, but it brings you into a community. And that, as we know, requires a place to go, people who are well trained. You don't get your degree online over a weekend, Father Mitch. At least I didn't get mine. I don't know about you.
I tried that.
So we need time to prepare people, sisters, priests, catechists, and that's what we do week in, week out, year out. And that creates that swell to make the word attractive. We don't force anybody, we propose the faith. And God is the one that brings folks to us, but we have to be ready for them.
And one of the great things about the church, for instance, in Africa, but elsewhere too, we don't say, well, if you're not a Catholic or you don't want to become a Catholic, you can't come to our schools. We don't do that.
We don't.
No, we welcome Muslim children, Christian children, people who are part of the traditional religions and animists and such. They all can come to study.
In fact,
it's remarkable.
It's one of the characteristics that even those who are not necessarily part of the Catholic community will see that inclusiveness is being a Catholic. Yeah. So whilst they don't belong to our religious tradition as such, they can point to us as including others, particularly in our services, for example. When we're talking about clinics or we're talking about schools, I mean, the church is the largest provider of HIV/AIDS care across Africa, 25%. Most of them women and children, at least in Africa. Yeah. We're not asking, we're doing it not by creed, but by need. Yeah. But we need that creed there in the first place to inspire us to serve others.
Yeah, Christ is the one who tells us to take care of the sick among the least of our brethren. And, so Christ is the source, the inner dynamic. But, that the reason that we provide care for AIDS patients more than any government, no government comes close to the amount of care that the Catholic Church offers. It's because we love them. It's not to get votes. We don't get, but Christ calls us to love them.
Right. And I think it's because we are so rooted in the local communities. Oftentimes, folks will come in from outside. They do good work, tremendous work, particularly times of disasters, natural disasters. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of folks will come in, Haiti and other places. But the church has been there from the beginning. It's there during the crisis, and it's going to be there long after most other people have left. And I think the folks on the other side see that difference. They know that this person's here for the long haul. They're going to be with me through thick and thin, and that makes the difference.
Right, and that ability to be there helps the church to recognize needs that are not so obvious at first glance. Classmate of mine from seminary had gone over to teach at a seminary in Africa. But as he was there for many years now, almost 40 years, he came to realize that the children of AIDS patients were often shunned by their families and left on their own. So he started an orphanage for the children of AIDS afflicted parents and a school for them because nobody else wanted them.
Right.
But that takes a sensitivity to see and observe.
And it takes an audacity, I guess. When you look at, I don't know, most folks have somebody they know who's gone to the missions and they come back and they're building an extra classroom. Before you know it, it's another classroom and then there's another school. I'm afraid we do. The Spirit has this abundance in its enthusiasm for its missionaries, and of course we have to dig deep to make sure that people get what they need.
Right. I mean, I've had bishops here who, are starting seminaries with nothing, but, they're just getting the stuff together and doing what they can and, getting some help here and there and giving them books and things, and they just start blossoming. That's sort of the way the Holy Spirit, works in giving a dynamic to us. You also mentioned, though, that there are, the United States has a missionary quality, and that's on a couple of different levels. Some parts of the country are actually under your auspices. Tell us about that first.
Sure. I mean, the Society for the Propagation of the Faith, without going into too much history, was started because a young French woman, Venerable Pauline Jaricot, back in France, her brother went off to be a priest in China. She said, well, I want to be a missionary. And she heard about the missions in the New World. And so the first collections that were done were for the church in the United States. Now, it stopped formally becoming a mission territory in 1908, except for one diocese up in Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska. Yes, where.
Yeah, you've been up there?
I have. I was there in my first Christmas. I went up there 40 degrees below, if you can imagine, around Christmas. And I went to a little town called the North Pole, and stupid me thought it was the North Pole. I told all my friends.
Up in the North Pole, it's really cold. That's the sunny south.
With the ice sculptures and the reindeers, I got to know this family who were in part of something called the Iditarod, if you know what that is.
Yes.
It was new to me as a blow-in from a foreign continent. And around 5 o'clock one night, the family put me on the back of a sled and took me through the tundra and the ice and the snow that sort of blew up. And it was just a wonderful experience of how people live their communities of faith in a very deep way. And they connect that with their surrounds, with the community. I remember them. There's about 14 huskies that they put together. If you've ever seen this,
I've ridden. I've ridden with them. Yeah, the dogs just can't wait to pool. They don't want to chase balls. None of that. They don't chase sticks. They want to pool something.
And the irony of it is, would that we had that enthusiasm as missionaries.
Yeah.
We know that we have a message to bring to others. And when we come together, we sort of jostle a little bit. And they all had their own character and their own temperament. And the woman who was in charge, she was the female champion. She was able to put them in their place when they started getting a little too restive. But once they went, they got the signal to go. Boy, did they pull in that direction, and whoosh, off we went. I thought that's a great model for missionary activity.
Sure. I've been to North Pole, Alaska, just actually south of Fairbanks, and to the Diocese of Fairbanks. They have a wonderful new bishop, Bishop Chad Zielinski. But this is a diocese twice the size of Texas. The diocese.
Right.
Twice the size of Texas.
Don't tell the Texans, though.
40. Yeah, just sort of keeps them trying a little harder. But there are 44 parishes and 16 priests. And that including the bishop.
Right.
And one airplane to try to get around.
Right.
So and when we talk about mission territory, where there's a lot of work to do, that's it. Yeah. That's a great place. They need priests and they need lay folk who are willing to work in the diocese and do things. That's right here. But that's not the only one. We've had people from Extension Society also talking about the missions here in this country.
Sure. A lot of rural areas in the United States that don't have access to the sacraments. We sort of presume that if you go to the local church on Sunday, you're going to get Mass. Maybe there used to be 5, now there's 3 or 2, unless you go out to California, and then the place is booming. I mean, the church on the West Coast is really full and sort of overflowing. But there are a lot of places that do struggle for that, and we have to remember them. We have to make sure that they get all of those types of formation that we can take for granted, but many folks don't have that. And the thing is, they're hungry for it, Father Mitch.
They are. As a matter of fact, go back to Texas. That's another place where the church, they're just packed. They need more church buildings. They need more priests. And the growth, the number of priests is increasing. We had a 25% increase of the number of ordained priests this year over last year. And there's some real growth, but we want to see this growth really move forward, and that's one of the things that you all do.
Sure, and particularly in Africa, the dioceses there are attracting a lot of vocations. Our seminaries are filling up more and more, and that's what one of the Pontifical Societies, St. Peter Apostle, 7,000 religious novices that were supporting 75,000 major seminarians. And if you've gone
How many?
75,000 major seminarians
75,000
that we support
in
across
the major seminaries.
Yeah. So, I mean, and a lot of those have started in, we don't have them anymore so much, junior seminaries or minor seminaries, so high school. So they're getting a very solid foundation. And if you've gone to a church in the U.S. Recently, you might have met one of them, a priest from India or a priest from Africa who's helping out as an associate pastor. They've become part of our common sort of tapestry of the church here in the U.S. So in many ways, that mission that we sowed many, many years ago.
It's reciprocal, going back and forth. You know, I'd like to, take a look at a little something, because you know how important it is that what you're doing with the Pontifical Mission Society is connecting different organizations, get them together. Let's take a look at some ways you connect people with needs and show how it's done.
Thank
you. Introducing Missio, the latest project launched by Pope Francis. Missio enables real change on the global level by supporting projects that help solve the world's largest problems, like hunger. Most farmers in the world today are women. If we equip women with the same resources as men, we would reduce the number of hungry people by 150 million. With Missio, you can support this cause and much more. This app lets anyone choose to take a stand and change the world for the better. The app pinpoints where real help is required and empowers you to make a difference right there in the palm of your hand. Missio is easy to use wherever and whenever. You're able to choose who and what to support. Simply touch, swipe, and connect. Your efforts are all part of a global network of care and compassion. Missio puts those making real change in the world in direct contact with their supporters, and vice versa. It allows them to share their needs as well as their progress. Missio is transforming the world of philanthropy, turning charity into change-making. Missio is for everyone, not just Catholics or people of faith. Anyone can use it to connect and help others in need and make real, lasting, authentic change in the world. Missio was part of a new moment for changemakers all around the world. Join Missio and be part of the movement to make the world a better place.
This is a cool way. I mean, Pope Francis, who's when he was in Argentina, wasn't really into all the new media, and I'm still not. I don't know how to Twitter and all that stuff, or tweet, as they say. But he started getting into it, and you are too with having an app.
Right.
That how much does the app cost?
It's absolutely free.
So it's a good price. And so you can download this app.
The app, that's right, yeah.
Into your cell phone or your computer.
Right.
And then it will help. This is a way to help people get connected to the different missions and say, well, I'm not so interested in helping seminaries, but I'd really like to help girls' schools,
exactly,
or boys' schools,
right,
or I want to help a seminary, or whatever. You get that.
Build a church, build a chapel. Every project on there is part of the Catholic Church's presence around the world. Mm-hmm. So you get to see them directly. You can choose, but there's an interesting piece, since we already are, as people of faith, part of the body of Christ. We already have that in common. We're united by our faith, by our sacraments. As it says, we want to invite other people into that conversation, into that work, into that faith. But we want to do it in a way that's back and forth. So Sister Mary Jo, who's running the clinic, or the professor in the seminary, also has the capacity to reach out to you to offer a prayer. It's not just about the funds or the good works that we can do. It's about building that body of Christ together so that we can strengthen that and be a leaven in the world. It's the back and forth that we're looking for, and that's what this app allows you to do.
In some ways, again, back from the old days in the 60s, one of the very important thinkers who was a convert to Catholicism was Marshall McLuhan. Right. And he came up with the phrase global village. And that's sort of what this allows, that the idea that you can look and find out what one particular mission is doing, and they can respond, you know, very easily with offers of prayers and gratitude. This is the back and forth that we have.
And these missionaries that we have great skills in being able to reach out to us in the West, who many consider are suffering from two great diseases: depression, anxiety, loneliness. So we have this ability to really give what we can, to reach out, and also to receive accompaniment, counsel, friendship from within this community. Oftentimes people go to apps or the internet to try and create an artificial community. We already have that as a church and as a people of faith. It's unfortunate that we don't really see that oftentimes in our technology. So wouldn't it be nice if we could bring that experience there?
A good deal of the commercial technology in the media is focused on connecting you with fellow sinners. That's right? I mean, what about that one group that helping people to commit adultery? And then the list got published? So no, you don't want that group. This is a group that's there to connect you with people that are going to lift you up and out of your inner, self and your own little world. One of the other things too, besides helping people to get beyond, their own little world of themselves, you help with something that I always use as a good marker of sanity. That is whether somebody has a sense of humor. Crazy people have no sense of humor. They cannot laugh at themselves. They can make fun of somebody, but they can't laugh at themselves. So you have something called Joke with the Pope.
Joke with the Pope.
So what are you doing with this?
So the Holy Father was coming to us and he wrote a whole encyclical called The Joy of the Gospel.
Right.
So we said, well, why don't we take that theme? It was also a theme with Archbishop Sheen in his shows. He would tell a little joke at the beginning to sort of put people at ease, to try and get over some of those barriers that folks have. Some preachers do that. So we said, well, why don't you donate? Some people think they're funny. Why don't you donate your joke to one of the Pope's missionary causes? And we put 3 of them there on the website. And we did it as a way of welcoming the Holy Father and highlighting the important work of his missionaries around the world. So that's what we did with Joke with the Pope.
Let's take a quick look at something that Timothy Cardinal Dolan did that he submitted before the Pope's visit.
Hi everybody, Cardinal Timothy Dolan here in New York. Are we ever looking forward to welcoming our beloved Pope Francis? He's known already as the Pope of Joy, so it's good that we're sharing some humorous comment or some joke about the Pope. This one's not about Pope Francis. It is something that really happened to me with Pope St. John Paul II. When I was Archbishop of Milwaukee, I visited the Holy Father, Pope John Paul II in Rome, and he asked me about Milwaukee. And he had known me a bit because I had been in Rome for 7 years as rector of the North American College, so he was kind enough to say that he remembered me and how are things going. And so I'm sitting there talking to him, and he said, tell me about the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. And I said, well, Holy Father, the Archdiocese is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. And he stopped me and he looked at me and he said, so is its Archbishop. I thought, oh great, now I have an infallible statement that I'm fat. Anyway, he laughed. I didn't. I hope you do.
I could hear the Pope saying, no, but not the Archbishop. Well, that's, and it's, as a matter of fact, you had a contest and it was a rabbi who won.
It was a rabbi who won, yes. A practicing rabbi told a beautiful joke about his family. I can tell you what it was. He said, I'm Rabbi Alpert. I've been a rabbi all my life. We've been married for 46 years. He said, me and my wife, which is true. He says, and we're just totally in sync. He said, the very day I got my hearing aid was the day that she stopped mumbling.
And that's why he won. All right, we're going to take a little break. We want to come back with some of the questions you might have about the missions in the church, ways you can be involved and that mutual relationship, and talk maybe about some of your own experiences. So please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back. First of all, I want to invite all of you to do with these nice folks who are from Wisconsin and Ohio and a bunch of other states around the country, Florida. Would like you to do what they've done, is come here and join us in beautiful Irondale, Alabama. How was the weather today? Isn't it stunning?
It is beautiful.
Stunningly beautiful today. And we'd love to have you come and enjoy it. So if you can, please call our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966 or go to the website ewtn.com, and they will give you information about scheduling of masses, programs where you can be in the office, places to places to stay, places to eat. We have some good food down here. Mm-hmm. You don't get fried green tomatoes in New York City. Come on. So we have all kind of good stuff here that we'd love for you to come and enjoy. You ready for some questions or comments? Let's start off.
Great.
We'll start with a caller. Hello, John.
Oh, hello, Father Mitch.
Hi, what can we do for you?
I got a question for our wonderful guests. How do we bring in a missionary fashion that personal effect to our parishes? And I'll hang up now.
All right, so how do you get that to the parishes?
Well, just to go back to what it is that makes us missionary. You know, mission means that we're sent, right? So we believe that we're sent. Oftentimes our parishes today, folks are kind of busy. They rush in and they rush out. You know, maybe the pastor knows people individually, if there's funerals, baptisms, etc. How do we get those folks coming together? And I think it's what Pope Francis is saying, to get out of your comfort zone, Father Mitch, and it's not easy to get out of your comfort zone. One of the easiest ways is to volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers. Oftentimes we have the one person doing 10 things. Wouldn't it be nice if we had just 10 people doing one different thing each? Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's natural ways, there's ways in which the church is inviting us in. I think if we just get out of that little comfort zone, it's a very easy distance, or a short distance, as they say, between a groove and a rut. You might feel as if you're in a bit of a rut, not so much in a groove. And the idea of seeing yourself as a missionary, somebody who's sent, I'm sent to you, you're sent to me. Mm-hmm. We sometimes don't like it. But I think making our contribution, I think, is what the Spirit's asking us to do. And if you're doing that and you're feeling a little pulled out of your comfort zone, I think you're being a missionary right there.
And there are a wide variety of ways to help. For instance, you know, I've had Susan Tassoni talking about the poor souls in purgatory. And one of the things that's a great help to the missions is getting mass intention stipends. Right. That can help a priest live for a month.
Right.
You know, if you are, and they'll do, you know, the stipends to pray for the deceased. Right. And it really makes a big difference in how they live. Or other folks I had on the show who in one of the West African countries that have been torn by a lot of civil war and marauding gangs, they stole all the chalices and patens.
Right.
So they're getting chalices and patens that are sitting in the safes of old churches, right, or old priests who died and left them behind, and they're sending them over to the ones who are needed. You can be very creative,
right,
and clever, and that's always good.
Right, right.
Ma'am, where are you from?
Dubuque, Iowa.
Good to have you here. Welcome. And what is your question or comment?
I just have a comment. Father, I saw your idea with the app, and I think so many people are interested in where the projects are throughout the world, not only locally. And I think the idea of an app where they can have a choice of where to donate, and maybe to multiple projects, or maybe to trade off from one project to another. So it's just a compliment. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's that coming together, putting in this new medium the reality of the body of Christ, you know, so that you can see exactly what it is that you want to help. They say in 1970 there were about 100,000 nonprofits in the United States. Now there are about 1.3, 1.4 million. So as the opportunities have exploded, obviously the church has become one amongst many options that you can use to do some good around the world. So what we've said is, well, you can trust these folks. I think trust is broken down, and you can trust by seeing exactly who it is that's doing the project. And you're not giving to some organization, you're giving exactly to that project. Sister Mary Jo is looking after some orphans, you're giving to her project. She needs $5,000 for some extra desks in a classroom, you're giving to that project. We use our existing global network to make sure that you're not afraid that it's going to end up with some Nigerian prince somewhere. We know who these people are, Father
But if you
Mitch.
send it to them, then you get $5 million to just help them out a little bit, right?
Not with us, not with this app. And the other side, and this is what I say so sincere, it's you can give, share, or act. You can give, obviously your money is very important. You can share it with other folks. Tell the good news of what the work the church is doing around the world. Spread that good news. Let people be touched by the commitment and dedication of missionaries. And you can act. You can write in the app and say, I'm going to do a little fundraiser. I'm going to run a 5K. I'm going to write to my member of Congress and tell them this is wrong what's happening to the girls in northern Nigeria with the Boko Haram, for example. And the app will remind you a week later, say, hey, Father Mitch, did you do what you said you were going to do? So it's got a bit of that nice Catholic guilt in there as well, so that we don't forget ourselves.
We have another caller. Hello, Stephen?
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure, where are you from?
Upstate New York.
Good to have you. And what's your question?
My question is, what percentage of the annual World Mission Sunday collection is distributed directly to the missions?
That's kind of related to what Father was just talking about. What about that? So this is there's a collection for the missions.
Right.
What percent goes to the missions?
This Sunday. So it will all go to every parish, and the parish will send it to all their dioceses, 180 dioceses. And then it will come to us in the national office. We take out between 5 and 7% so that we can do our publicity, send our envelopes around, do some education, go to the schools. And then the 93%, what's my math doing? 90 to 93% goes straight to the missions. We send that directly. We don't send it to Rome. We send it directly to the churches in the mission territories.
So, and you know, we every so often we hear about some of these global funds that exist where 85% goes to maintenance of a certain lifestyle to which they'd like to become accustomed. Only 15% gets to the people in need. You don't do that.
Well, and I think that's what I was saying to the kind question.
You don't have your own jet.
Not yet.
Are you fixing to get one?
No.
All right. So we want to hear.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. And it's all scrutinized, and we send all our financials to the Bishops' Conference and to Rome and to all the directors around the country. See, that's the beauty and the torture of the church. We're very decentralized, Father Mitch.
Yes.
You know, people think that the Pope says something, everybody whips around him, but we know that ain't kind of the case. So, and that's the beauty of it, that's the strength. It's called subsidiarity. We're organized locally. Hey, ask your pastor, what's going on here? Ask your local mission office. Tell us what you did this year. Where did my mission appeal go? Where did my mission money? Most of them do publish an annual report, But all up the chain, I think we want people asking the right questions to keep us all as good as we should be.
Exactly, exactly. And, you know, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, the Catholic Church is the richest organization in the world. In a certain sense, yes, considering the wonderful people that we have. But when it comes to money, it's not a bad thing to be aware that Harvard University, with just a very few thousand students, has a larger endowment than all the money at the Vatican combined. You know, a lot of people think, oh, the church is just loaded. Now, we do have some great and priceless pieces of art. And some, to me, not so wise people say, why don't you just sell it and give it to the poor? If I did that, if the church did that, what would happen to, say, the Pietà? It'd go to some rich guy's house, and he and his friends can look at it. When the church has it, any poor person or rich person, right, anybody who wants to walk inside St. Peter's can go see the Pietà for free. And so instead of selling it to the rich for a few dollars now, for the last 500 years, everybody can look at it and enjoy the beauty. That's also Catholic.
I mean, a couple of things on that. They used to say that the cathedrals, medieval cathedrals, were the hotels of the poor. Right. That was one of the sayings, that when they were building these great stained glass windows, they said everybody was welcome. They were the center of the community. The other thing I would say, you know, when you look at the large organizations, the World Bank, the United Nations, etc., I'm sure doing wonderful work. Billions of dollars annually, right? Billions of dollars. So what the church does with relatively little is phenomenal. And I think it's because of the commitment of the men and women around the world. When you compare it to what the public budget is, and we still have 1 billion people go to bed hungry every night. So the church is doing a lot with not a lot of its donations. But we're grateful for it, and I think they stretch it more than anybody else does.
Yeah. Even organizations like Bread for the World are very clear that religious organizations are far more effective in getting things directly to the poor than governments are. And then especially when you add our government. I mean, they're okay, they can get the mail to you. However, the problem, the evil of some of the foreign aid of our government is that they say, yeah, we'll give you money for food so long as you let us teach your women how to abort their babies and have contraception and sterilize them. So if you let us stop you from having more babies, we'll give you money. That's evil. That's evil. And the church says, you know, it's yours. We give it to you. I have a question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
Trenton, New Jersey.
Good to have you here. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
And your question?
Father Small, we see so much on the news these days with the crisis in the Mideast. What does your work have to do with the millions of people that are displaced in that area?
Yeah.
Thanks. That's a great question. With the church, as always, there's a lot of pieces and moving parts, so I'll try and keep it fairly simple. We launched a campaign through the app to help the refugees, particularly to help the church in Turkey as it's trying to cope with what's going on there.
Which is, by the way, a very relatively small community.
Very
there
small.
Aren't many. There are Catholics in Turkey, but small. So, just so that folks understand that.
But for us, people in need are people in need. I mean, that's the way we're compelled to reach out, not because you're the same religion as me, but because you're somebody suffering, you're struggling. So we've launched a campaign. Generally, though, when it comes to the Middle East, as you know, the largely non-Latin rite parts of our church. And the Pope has his own separate organization of folks from the West who support the churches in the East. And that's headed by my predecessor and good colleague, Monsignor John Kozar. That's called the Catholic Near East Welfare Association, or CNEWA is the little handy-dandy name for it. And they get a percentage of this collection on World Mission Sunday. So very much I'm aware of what's going on, but they have a lot of those relationships with the different rites, the different groups, making sure that the various, the faith can be celebrated through their seminarians, through their priests, etc. I mean, something that you're much more familiar with than I am, Father Mitch.
Well, one of the things too, I think is worth noting, the last 100 years, the churches of the East have suffered the brunt of persecution. When it was in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, it was the Eastern Orthodox communities and the Eastern Rite Catholics, the Greek Catholics. Sure. Now it's the Christians in the Middle East. But we in the West haven't experienced what they have. They've gone, again, 40 million martyrs in the last 100 years, mostly in the Eastern Christians of the Byzantine and Orthodox, or now in the Middle East. Sure. So the church is doing tremendous stuff. Jesuit refugee services, all the refugee services run by the church are feeding and clothing and doing everything they can, plus the Chaldean diocese, the Syriac Catholic diocese, and of course the Orthodox communities, the Maronite communities in Lebanon. They're just doing whatever they can, but they're overwhelmed by the chaos.
Right.
It's horrible. We have another caller. Hello, Dan?
Hi, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm calling from Connecticut.
Great. And your question?
Yes, I have two brief questions for your guest. The first is, since Vatican II, has the approach to missionary work changed? Has it been modified in any way? I sort of get the distinct impression that zeal that we used to see years ago might have been diminished. And secondly, the former Soviet Union and its satellite countries were marked by a very strong sense of atheism. Is there missionary work being done in Russia and the former countries of the Soviet Union and all of its satellite countries? And with that, thank you for taking my question, and I'll listen to your answer.
Thank you very much, Dan. Great questions.
Sure.
So, first of all, is there any missionary zeal going on in Africa?
Well, I mean, this year we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council's document on missionary activity. It was called Ad Gentes, meaning that everybody has an obligation to bring the faith to the peoples, right? To those who haven't heard of Jesus, or as Cardinal Dolan and Archbishop Chaput would indicate, those who've heard and maybe forgotten, or those who've let the faith fall by the wayside. So the idea of that is very clear. I suppose there was maybe a dialing down of the sense that people of other faiths or other traditions are not being touched by God. There was this sort of a sense of maybe coming together in a more of a dialogue environment. I think certainly the zeal from the United States has not waned at all, and we can see that through the vocations. I mean, we don't have bursting seminaries in Africa unless we had missionaries preaching the faith over the past 30, 40 years. Many people will remember a program called the Holy Childhood Association. Mm-hmm. We used to know it as the Pagan Babies. Folks will remember that, putting their nickels and dimes for the pagan babies. We can giggle a little, or some people do now, at that concept, but it was the most sort of branding sense of obligation that people have for their brothers and sisters around the world. The church can do wonderful things, Father Mitch, but it can do nothing if there's no church.
Right. That
was question one. I
would just add to let him know that in many ways you had a dynamic in the West of confusing mission activity with cultural imperialism.
Right.
And so a lot of Christians in the West say, well, we shouldn't go to put our culture on them. However, in the absence of the Christian missionaries, what you have instead are the secular people imposing abortion and birth control and the changing of the family. You see the president going over there to preach about same-sex marriage in Africa. So this secular message and secular imperialism that Pope Francis speaks about very strongly, that is sent instead of the missionaries. But secondly, also you've got the Africans are alive with the faith without us or with us. They are filled with wisdom and knowledge and activity, and Africa is now a majority Christian continent. The majority of Africans today, including North Africa, the majority are Christians. And so it is going on. How about the second part of his question?
Well, I mean, he was talking about, just to follow up on that, I suppose maybe the idea of evangelizing not so much territories. We had that sort of vast sort of sense of an expanse going half a world away. I know Pope St. John Paul II talked very much about the evangelization of culture. And that's where we get the idea of a culture of life, which goes exactly to your point. Without a true evangelization of a culture, taking up all that is good and holy within the natural culture of a people and making it even more. Not, you know, Jesus never takes anything away. He always makes it more.
Exactly. Whereas the secular people are exporting violent movies and pornography. So which cultural imperialism is better for Africa and Asia, Latin America, or North America for that matter?
We have some questions to ask, and we have to keep asking them, even though people would wish they'd go away. The second question, I was just with the Holy Father, believe it or not, whether he knew it or not, in Cuba. Now, Cuba's been a sort of very much a thorny part of our history over the past 50 years or so. And I've been there several times in my work helping the church in Cuba, which is a complex, small, but very vibrant church. But to watch, Father Mitch, and this maybe goes for the rest of that sort of that empty lie that is the communist promise, is to look at what they call in Spanish, if you pardon my Spanish, la mirada quemada, the burnt look. So that's folks who've been told from an early age that not even your body is your own. Now,
you belong to the state.
This is supposed to be liberating. This is supposed to be telling you that you're throwing off the shackles of the opium of the... What's going on here? So you see that. You can see that. But then you can see the hunger and the thirst when somebody comes with a message that's truly liberating. You know, people drink the sand because they don't know the difference. When they're given living water, as the woman at the well, they drink and they won't stop drinking. And that's what we saw when I was down in Cuba most recently in the visit of the Holy Father. It was so enlivening for the church there.
I always like, you know, it was Marx who said that religion is the opiate of the people. When they took away religion, they gave them opiates. That's why they die of alcoholism in Russia now. Hello, Mike, we have you on the line. Mike, are you there?
Yes, Father.
Oh, there you are. Okay. So, Mike, what's your question?
My question is, I live in an area where there's not many Catholics, and sometimes somebody will say to me, like, there is no such thing as a Catholic Christian. And I say point blank that, you know, I'm as much Christian as any other denomination, and I'm older.
Now, you're not talking about yourself personally, but you mean the church.
I mean the church. All right. And what I'm saying is...
For me personally, I would say I am too, but that's different.
Idealistic or argumentative?
All right. So, that's sometimes a fine line. Are you evangelistic or are you argumentative?
Right. Yeah.
Or a third option that sounds like Mike and I might go with, are you a wise guy? So,
well, I'm a wise guy. Youngest of 5 boys, I had to be a wise guy and talk fast in my house. But I guess I mean, it goes to the point of how do we witness, right? How can we be convincing? St. Paul talks about this all the time, right? All the smartest words in the world can't, you know, ultimately enter a heart that's closed, right? Only the Lord really can do that. The Pope talks about that. Only the Lord can really touch people. He says, you know, I see the Lord knocking on the doors of our hearts, but he's also knocking on the door from the inside of our hearts, looking to get out. Are we doing our part through our witness. And sometimes we have no words with those who calumnize us and accuse us. And,
Right.
and yet we need to be patient with them, because they will know we are Christians by our love. My dad used to say, convince a man against his will, he'll have his opinion still. So it's only the Lord, the power of God working through us, if he so chooses, that can, I think, really touch people. And when he does, it changes everything.
And especially, you know, in a place where there are other Christians, but they're not Catholic, sometimes anti-Catholic. Speak first about those things we share in common. Salvation is from Jesus Christ. He does it by his grace. We believe in the Word of God. Begin with those common points and emphasize that in your, even when they try to bring us to the side issues.
Sure.
Bring that, and then you can go to the other issues.
Right.
But we've got a big issue. We're out of time.
Oh,
Thank
already?
you very much for being with us. And if you join me in giving a blessing, may Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. You know, we can do a show like this, get you ready for Mission Sunday and let you know what's going on in the missions and so many other things that we do in this network, only because the network is brought to you by you. That's how Mother Angelica set it up. So we do ask you, please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll pay our bills too. God bless you and thank you.